Bill, welcome back to the X22 Report Spotlight.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Thanks for being here, and let's start off with the Brexit. We know the people had a vote. It was a referendum, an advisory referendum. They have not enacted Article 50. The Parliament, the EU countries did not come together and vote the UK out. Where is this going? Because right now, nothing's really changed. I mean, we see the central bankers using a lot of excuses for this, but where are we going with this Brexit, and what's your take on it?
Well, my opinion, first, I think Brexit is going to lead other nations. You're going to see a referendum in Italy in October, I believe, and now you've got the potential of referendum in France, Netherlands, even Belgium. It's basically a signal that the populations, there's major discontent, and secondly, it shows the non-cohesiveness of the EU, and I think it will lead to a breaking up of the EU eventually. Now, not necessarily because of Brexit, but because of what that leads to. It'll lead to other nations leaving.
So since the Brexit has happened, we're seeing a lot of things happen in other countries. You mentioned Italy. We see the Italian banks, they are, imploding on themselves. Right. German banks, same thing. We see Credit Suisse, same thing. Most of these banks are insolvent. They have so many bad loans on their books. It's ridiculous. Are we at a Lehman moment? Is this a black swan where this is going to start the chain reaction of everything collapsing?
Well, we're pre-Lehman moment. The Lehman moment is when a major bank does blow up. But if you look at the CDS, the credit default swaps, on the Italian banks, they're nearly at a level where they're forecasting a 70% chance of the Italian banks blowing up. You could also look at Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank, their credit default swaps are almost back to where they were back in February. The system is set up like dominoes, and you can't have any domino fall in either direction because the whole chain goes in both ways. So the volatility that we had after Brexit, and I wrote immediately that weekend, the volatility that Friday and the following Monday, without a doubt, has made insolvent many financial entities. We just don't know who they are yet. And it really does not matter who they are because the whole system is insolvent. It doesn't matter if it's Deutsche Bank or Monte Paschi or whoever. If you have your funds in East Podunk Bank, USA, you're still going to go down the drain when the whole system goes down the drain. Because you can't have a major bank with hundreds of billions, or in the case of Deutsche Bank, 70 some odd trillion dollars worth of derivatives default and not take the entire system with it. It's going to take the whole system. There's not going to be any place to hide within the system.
I agree with you. And you mentioned dominoes falling. And what's very interesting about this, and this is my take on it, and I know you have a different take about what happened with the Brexit, we see that the central bankers now, the EU, they're making excuses of, hey, look, we can bail out the Italian banks. Hey, we can create more currency right now. The Fed says, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to raise interest rates. And we see the stock market come down. And it looks like, to me, that they're letting the air out of the bubble, buying themselves some time, doing things that they normally wouldn't be, I'll use the word allowed to do in normal circumstances, because how do they explain it away? So they can use this as their excuse. What is your take? Do you see the same as me, or do you see something a little different?
I look at it a little bit different. I agree with you Brexit has allowed or will allow, it already has, the ECB, I guess they've told Italy they could come up with 150 billion euros they could put into the system. ECB put 400 billion euros into the system the day or Monday and Tuesday after Brexit. So yeah, it did allow the central banks to do things like what we did back after Lehman, TARP. My opinion differs from yours, where I believe Brexit is going to be the event that they blame. In other words, they know the system's coming down. They know that the system is untenable. They know it's coming down, but they have to have something to point at. They have to have something to blame. And I think the blame is going to be put on Brexit. None of this would have happened if the British people were not unreasonable. I think that's what's going to be said.
We know this is what the central banks do. They never take blame for themselves. I mean, they always point the finger, normally at the people. Actually, the people pick up the tab. The people are in debt. The people always get blamed for everything.
Right.
They're never to blame. So, in your opinion, will the UK actually ever leave the EU?
Who knows? I mean, the EU may break up before Britain invokes Article 50. I mean, who knows? It's kind of meaningless to wonder whether they, whether the Brits leave, don't leave, because whether they invoke Article 50 or not, there's going to be other referendums, assuming the financial system holds together up until even October, up until the Italian referendum. You're going to have the French referendum. More than likely, you'll have one in Netherlands, in Belgium. You're going to have other countries, vote to leave. You may even, it's even possible that Germany votes to leave because they don't want to foot the bill. They're going to be left holding the bag. So why would they want to stay as the center pole of this tent that everybody's, pulling on them because they're actually supporting it?
You know, what's very interesting is that there's a lot of talk coming out of the EU how they want to create this EU, I'll use the word empire, superstate, where they want a EU army. They want to be separate and apart from NATO. They'll work with NATO, but they want to control their own forces. They want to go into Africa and bring on more nations into the EU. And then yesterday I talked about the EU having their own border patrol, which would be released to countries if there are problems with refugees in the country. Where are they going with this? I mean, are they saying, okay, listen, we know this is happening, but we're going to become stronger from this, or is this just all talk?
I think it's a pipe dream. I don't see that as even remotely happening. For the EU is going to shrink and fall apart. They're not going to become an empire. They can't. Financially, look at it from a financial standpoint. They don't have the wealth. They don't have the stability to do it. It's not going to happen.
The only thing that makes me worried is that central bankers never go down without a fight. And I'm afraid they're going to pull something out, and it will be something that we have not even expected to happen. And
it will probably be war. That's generally the MO is they create war. Interesting. Speaking of central bankers, I just read this morning that Ben Bernanke is going to be in Japan next week and meet with Kuroda and Abe. That will be very interesting. It very well could be the beginning of what they've talked about all along, is helicopter money.
And for those people who don't understand what helicopter money is, what do you mean by helicopter money?
Well, it's basically just, it would amount to depositing money into the masses' accounts. Maybe the term helicopter money comes from dropping money out of helicopters for the people, or to the masses.
Right.
Particularly what it does is it destroys the value of whatever currency is being dropped out of the helicopter, and it creates inflation.
So how is this going to help the situation?
It won't. I mean, I'm not the one suggesting that they use helicopter money, but the central banks believe they have to have inflation, and in essence, they do have to have inflation to make the massive debt that's already built up payable. The debt's not payable.
Right.
It's gonna be a default one way or the other. Either the debt doesn't get paid, or the currencies around the world collapse to small percentages of the value of the purchasing power they have now in order to pay the debt back. So there's going to be a default one way or the other. It's either an outright default or currency devaluations.
You know what's amazing about all this? We hear the central banks talk about, negative interest rates, the helicopter money, QE. I mean, at the end of all of this, I mean, what is their end game? Because none of this, I mean, everyone knows at this point that this is not going to fix anything. Are they just prolonging the inevitable?
Well, they have been prolonging the inevitable. They've been prolonging the inevitable since 2008, 2009 with the various QEs, with the QEs out of Japan, out of Europe. So yeah, they're prolonging the inevitable. What it's going to do is, and I've said this all along, we're going to have a reset. We're going to have new currencies that are trusted. And the only way to have a trusted currency is one that is ratio backed by gold.
And do you think, and where is this currency going to come from? Is it you talking about China or Russia, or you're talking about something completely different?
Obviously, China has been accumulating gold, and it's my belief that you're going to, and this is just I guess you could say being sarcastic, but I could picture China putting all their gold reserves in the center of a football stadium and filming it for the world to see and say, here's our gold, and then ask the United States, where's yours? And that gold will go to back the currency. You've got others talking, like Jim Rickards is talking about the SDR is going to go back, and that's going to be the new currency. I don't see that. I can't see how it's possible, because the IMF is the gold that they say they have is mostly pledged gold. It's not gold that they actually have. It's pledged. So they're, I think, what is it, 2,800 tons or 3,200 tons, something like that. They don't actually have that gold. And even if they did have that gold, you'd be talking about a really big number. I don't know, $7,500, $100,000 per ounce in order for the 3,200 tons to be able to back a currency that could step in and replace the dollar.
Talking about gold, we've seen gold surge. We're at 13 and change right now, 1350. It's coming down a little bit today. Is your forecast still gold continually moving upward?
Well, gold is coming into the system. Gold is being remonetized. Gold is going to be what will, like I said, on a ratio, will back currencies. So, yeah, we're in it. If you want to call it a bull market, call it whatever you want, but gold is coming into the system. It's not going out. It's not going away.
Do you think the central banks, the governments, do you think the manipulation has come to an end? Do you think they have the ability to manipulate the precious metals market anymore?
Yeah, it's coming to an end. It has not come to an end. You can see that clearly with the amount of open interest expansion on COMEX. I mean, since the beginning of the year, there's roughly 250,000 additional contracts open on COMEX. That's what, 25 million ounces or something like that. I mean, that's an absurd number. And that has acted to dilute or retard the price of gold. And that's the way they've fought the battle, is by trying to slowly back up and slowly manage the price rise. But that's all going to end. And I've said this for a couple of years, and I get trolled whenever I say it. COMEX is going to default. I mean, it's just mathematically going to happen. The physical demand is going to far overwhelm the supply, and certainly far overwhelm the paltry inventories that COMEX is sitting on.
I mean, right now we're seeing gold surge like we've been talking about, but we also see the dollar still very strong as gold is moving up. When do you think this is going to break and gold is going to continually move up and the dollar is going to start to devalue?
Well, let me correct you on that. Okay. The dollar's not strong. Mm-hmm. It's that other currencies are weak.
That's true.
It's a basket of all fiat currencies. So you're saying that the dollar's strong. Well, yeah, it's stronger than the euro. It's stronger than the pound, the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar, because those are so weak. If you look at gold in Canadian dollar terms, in Australian dollar terms, in British pound terms, in terms of euro, even yen, gold is either very, very close or at and making new highs versus those currencies. So though gold is down, $500 or thereabouts from the peak back in 2011, 2012 in dollar terms, gold in terms of British pounds, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, euros, etc., is basically making new highs. So you're watching those currencies devalue. They're devaluing versus the dollar and devaluing versus gold.
So
to answer your question, yeah, at some point you're going to see a major revaluation higher in gold versus the dollar, and then you'll see that all fiat currencies are collapsing. The dollar is going to be the last fiat currency to go.
So we're going to see like fiat currencies in around the world all start to collapse, and then it will eventually end up here in the United States.
Right. Well, you're watching that. That's what's happening right now. That's why you're seeing gold go to new highs in foreign currency terms.
We have a perfect storm headed our way. When we look at the economic indicators, they're trending down. GDP, manufacturing, trucking, rail traffic. Gold is surging. Stock market's bouncing all over the place. And then we have the elections. Hillary was cleared by the FBI. And we see now we have two candidates, Hillary and Trump, that are running. We see that the U.S. is continually moving troops into the Middle East, into Eastern Europe, into the Pacific, provoking different countries, Russia, China, North Korea. Here we are. Where are we going at this point? Because we're at a point where everything is coming together right now. And do you think that these elections will happen come this fall?
Well, I've said for 6 months now that I think there's less than a coin flip chance that we actually have an election. And especially if it looks like Trump is going to win, we won't have the election. Because that would basically, I do believe that he's an outsider. I don't think he's a Trojan horse. And I don't think that the power structure could allow Trump to become president, because then the supposed rule of law that we have now, which is no rule of law at all, which you saw with Hillary, a real rule of law would put all kinds of people in jail.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no, I don't think there's, I suspect that there's better than a 50-50 chance that we don't even have an election. And I do believe that you're going to see financial markets collapsed prior to the elections, the U.S. elections.
And what will stop the elections? I mean, is the president going to say, okay, the economy's collapsing, we just need to postpone the elections right now? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is, how could you have an election under martial law?
Oh.
If we're under martial law, how do you have an election? If you've got riots in the streets, how do you have an election?
You can't.
I mean, that's where this ultimately goes. This is a credit bubble it's collapsing, and when it does completely collapse and credit freezes up, and I've said this multiple times, distribution is going to break down. And when distribution breaks down, even if you have $100 bills in your pocket, Walmart's not going to have any goods to sell you. And you'll see the EBT, food stamp cards will cease. There wouldn't be goods anyway, but you're going to have a very hungry and very angry population.
So people should be looking at Venezuela right now and taking note about what they're experiencing right now, where people are lining up to get food, people are fighting over beef. You're saying the same thing's going to happen here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the roadmap. Just look at what is happening there. Listen to accounts of what people wish they had, wish they had stocked up on, and that's what you need to be doing. I mean, you're talking about even if you have money, yeah, you can get a hamburger, but it's $170 for a hamburger. Dollars. I'm not talking about in Venezuelan bolivars or whatever. In U.S. dollars, a hamburger is $170. So the goods are just not available to be had. And that's where we're headed because, like I said, everything runs on credit, and without credit, distribution doesn't happen. And goods don't make it to Walmart shelves. They don't make it to Main Street.
So you're saying right now that you don't think we're going to make it into this fall. You think the economy is going to crash during this time period?
Well, I think the financial markets are going to crash, and that will finish off what's going on in the economy. I mean, the economy's weak. Like you were talking about trucking and the Baltic Dry Index numbers, et cetera. Those are showing you that the economy is definitely soft and weakening all around the world. But a collapsing and collapsed financial market will bring global trade, the global economy, to a standstill.
I just wanted to get into a little bit about war, and I know this is not your expertise, but I just wanted to ask you, since we're heading in this direction of the economy's crashing, no election, you still see war headed in our direction?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the U.S. is running around the world poking a stick in everybody's eyes. So, and I've also said before that war would be certainly a logical thing to occur, to point at, as well our policies would have worked if it wasn't for the war. And just look at history. If you look at history for the last 2,000 years, when trade goes bad, or when one nation defaults on another nation, they start wars. And it's the belief in Washington that war is good for the economy. It used to be that war is good for the economy. It's no longer, that's no longer the case, because what's going to happen is the U.S. no longer manufactures anything. So if we went to war over the South Sea Islands with China, or we went to war with Russia, and assuming that nuclear weapons were not used, the U.S. is going to be isolated. Our imports are just going to stop. The world won't take dollars from the U.S. And we don't have the ability to manufacture the goods that we use every day. So this time around, in my opinion, war is going to be a disaster for the U.S. financially.
So what we're talking about here is an economic collapse, no elections, martial law, and war, all happening, coming up very soon. Let me ask you this. What does America look like? Like, what type of economy are we going to have after all of this? I mean, we'll no longer, I assume, be the reserve dollar of the world. So what type of lifestyle are Americans going to have?
Well, obviously, our standard of living is going to drop. And in the worst case scenario, go watch the movie Mad Max. I mean, that's certainly a potential. If the credit system does seize up, then you might as well watch the Mad Max movie, because that's where we're headed. Barter, I'll give you this for that.
So going after that point, you don't think we'll ever get back to the way our lives are today?
To answer that question, in your and my lifetime in the United States, I think the answer is clearly no. There's no way to go back to the 1950s, where we were the manufacturing base of the world. There will be no way in our lifetime during the last 50 plus years where we're the financial center of the world. That's not going to happen. Now, could it happen in 50 years or 100 years? Can the U.S. rebuild? Yes, certainly. And there will be a new system that arises, and that system will grow and build on itself, but it's going to be very different from the way we grew up. We grew up, whereas the U.S. was pretty much the leader. We were the leader of the world. We led the world in so many different areas. We're being leapfrogged, and we got fat, we got lazy, we took on too much debt. We didn't work hard. We're not manufacturing. We're not doing any of the things that made this country great to begin with. And speaking of, that brought to mind, Trump would make America great again. Think about the amount of people in the U.S. that don't work. That live on food stamps, that live on welfare, you're talking about over 50% of the population now takes. And just go back 50 years in the 1960s. Welfare, unemployment, things like that, those were supposed to be stopgap measures. They were supposed to help the person out who was down on their luck until they could stand on their own 2 feet, go back to work, or whatever. Now, food stamps, welfare, entitlements has become a way of life. There are families that where the kids grow up learning how